Hello and welcome to Marketplace Tech's Decoding Democracy, our new limited series talking about misinformation and disinformation in the 2024 election. I'm Lily Jamali. Today, I am once again joined by Marketplace senior correspondent Kimberly Adams. Kimberly, welcome to you.
Hey, Lily.
Hey, great to have you back. So last time we did a deep dive into audio deepfakes. Today, with a little help from Kate Middleton, we're going to be looking at the current state of visual manipulation and deepfakes and how it interfaces with election mis and disinformation. So, Kimberly, first thing, it's not all that hard to produce an AI-generated image. Can you talk a little bit about how this works?
Right. There's really a whole spectrum of activities when it comes to this. You can have something like what happened with Kate Middleton, where you use artificial intelligence and a photo editing app like, your Photoshops or something else, or even something within your smartphone that uses AI to help tweak a photo to just change the way it looks a little bit. That's on one end of the spectrum that casual users might do. But on the other end, a casual user can also go to an app like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, or Stability AI and just type in a prompt that will allow you to generate an image from nothing. And then you can add in prompts and other directions to sort of tweak that image until it looks the way you want.
All right, well, let's look at some examples, shall we? And again, we want to emphasize this one is not related to the election and it's not AI generated from what we know, but it is very much a teachable moment. So this is Kate Middleton's Mother's Day photo tweeted out last week. And the thing is, even though it wasn't generated by AI, initially there was some concern that it maybe was. We didn't know. There's still a lot we don't know about this photo. But Middleton tweeted it out. We thought it was her. And then she says, I was just doing some photo editing, got a little carried away. So there was a kill notification that went out about this photo. And we wanted to just kind of briefly get your thoughts on this. I mean, at first glance, I didn't realize there was anything wrong here.
Right, because it just looks like a casual photo, and it's only upon closer inspection that you start to see the changes where lines don't quite line up properly on window frames, or hands are positioned oddly, or, it just so happens that the face looks exactly like the face from a different photo and things like that. But what this really taught, and it's a great phrase that you used, a teachable moment, is how these kinds of things can undermine trust. Because Kensington Palace did not disclose that this photo had been edited in that way, now you have all of these news organizations that no longer trust the information coming out of Kensington Palace. And that's how this kind of ties into the election, where we can actually trust images coming from and videos coming from. And that is really kind of under attack right now.
Totally. Let's look at another example. This is from a video that was released by then presidential candidate Ron DeSantis in June. He was running for the GOP nomination against former President Trump. There were a couple of AI-generated images in that video, including this one of Trump hugging Dr. Anthony Fauci, who, of course, was a big GOP target for his handling of the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, his role in crafting public policy there.
Right. And this photo was sort of very famous for being an example of how deepfakes can be used in politics. He was using this as part of an ad to say that while Donald Trump became famous for firing people, he refused to fire Anthony Fauci. And then to help make that argument, his campaign, or this group related to his campaign, created an image to sort of amplify that Trump and Fauci had a closer relationship than they did. This image is not real, but it was being used for political purposes to spread a narrative that wasn't entirely true.
Right. And then there's this one. This is President Biden in, again, an AI-generated photo in military fatigues authorizing military strikes. This came from a random account on X, formerly known as Twitter. It's from January and was shared after a drone strike in Jordan that killed 3 American troops. Some of the telltale signs here, one that strikes me is weird objects that don't really look like anything in particular on the table.
Right, this sort of cluster of technology in the middle that could be computers, wires, maybe what looks like Lego bricks sitting next to
Mhm.
somebody. But also, again, if you look at people's hands, or there's a person sort of further down the table where their neck doesn't look quite right. But if you're just scrolling through quickly online, it seems like a plausible image about a real thing that is happening, but is being used to sort of create a narrative. And so, even though the images themselves don't show Trump or Biden committing crimes or potentially doing anything specifically terrible, it could be used to sort of further a narrative or perpetuate something or create a false understanding of an incident, which is how these things can sort of be insidious in the mix of everything else going on.
Absolutely. Well, let's call on our expert on this for some help. Claire Wardle is a professor at the Brown University School of Public Health. She specializes in misinformation, verification, and user-generated content. And the trajectory right now on this stuff seems to be headed in the direction of trust nothing, right, Kimberly? And here's what she said about that.
I'm increasingly hearing people say, well, I don't trust anything anymore. Could be a photo, could be a video. I've got no idea where it's coming from. So I'm not engaging anymore. I don't trust. And we've seen that actually happen with events in the Middle East, really traumatic graphic imagery coming out of Gaza, and people saying, well, that can't possibly be true. It's too upsetting. So that to me is something I'm worried about, which is as a society, we stop seeing photography or videography as evidence.
And that's one of the reasons why that Kate Middleton photo became such a big deal for these big news agencies. They need to let their clients and everybody else who looks at photos from AFP or the Associated Press or whatever, or Reuters news agency, and know that those photos are real. So when something slips in like that has been altered, it's a real risk to them because people are already so skeptical of images and videos floating around. And so we are still here in the news media, as well as a culture, trying to figure out ways to let people know quickly what's real, what isn't, what's trusted, and what shouldn't be trusted. And we haven't quite landed anywhere yet.
Absolutely. And there's also this notion of the liar's dividend, the idea that deepfakes can help create plausible deniability. Lying gets easier when the public is exposed to more sophisticated deepfakes, when we know that they're out there. I mean, it's good that we know that they're out there, but when we start to question everything, that kind of creates its own issue. And here's Professor Wardle on that.
In this moment where people understand how easy it is to fake something, if I'm a politician that gets caught on a hot mic or something emerges of me doing something that I shouldn't have done, rather than say, sorry, I'm just going to say, wasn't me. Somebody created that. That's a deep fake audio. That wasn't a hot mic moment.
This is coming up in legal context as well. Tesla's being sued for wrongful death for someone who was killed in one of the Teslas using autopilot. And as part of this case, they're talking about the claims that Elon Musk made about Tesla's autopilot feature. And in court filings, Tesla is out here saying, oh, well, you can't say that this was definitely something that Musk said because it could have been a deep fake. And I want to read here from Mashable, which quoted the judge, which says, their position is because Mr. Musk is famous and might be even more of a target for deep fakes, his public statements are immune because this is stuff that he said in public. And they're saying, well, you never know. And so imagine this with politicians, as Dr. Wardle said, with hot mic moments, or even if someone has a secret recording where they want to use it in an investigation or an expose, it makes all these things a lot harder.
Yeah, and there was an example recently in the Taiwanese elections. The ruling party there, a key politician entered a hotel. There's an image, I should say, of this politician entering a hotel with a woman, raising questions about their relationship. And the first defense was, the footage was AI generated. And it's still unclear at this point if it was or wasn't. We don't know. But, you get this sense of just how valuable ground truth is, and losing that sense of ground truth can be so incredibly destructive.
And this is why it's particularly important for people to find trusted sources and do the best you can. I mean, who knows? Maybe this will get people to start going to political rallies and events again so they can actually see with their own eyes and hear with their own ears what politicians are really saying.
Yeah. Well, Professor Wordle offered us some tips on how to recognize a deep fake image. And the first thing seems to be, I'm learning this, especially in the aftermath of the Middleton image. Start with the hands, Kimberly.
The hands, yes. Hands are really challenging for AI to generate accurately or even to manipulate accurately. We've got too many joints and veins and things like that. But there are lots of other things you can look at in an image. You know, we saw that pile of miscellaneous junk on the table that at first glance looked like tech, but then when you look closely, it's not really anything. Lines that don't line up, and you know, are lines too parallel, or are they not ending in the right place that you expect them to? Also, the lighting on people's faces. If there's a big group of people mixed up together and yet somehow every single person is perfectly lit, that may be you might want to be a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, really interesting pointers there. The image that we showed earlier of President Biden in military fatigues, one thing I learned from that, a telltale sign there, you mentioned lines, parallel lines that are supposed to actually converge. So if you're looking at a table or the ceiling lines, they're supposed to come together over time, across space. So that's something to look out for. And our shadows out of place. So let's do a little compare and contrast. This is part of a thing we like to do on this segment, Real or Fake. I think we have some examples. Let's pull up this one of President Trump, this is President Trump at the White House. I believe it was in 2020.
Right. February 27th, 2020. He was meeting with members of the African-American community. This is a real photo of Trump with Black supporters, people who were big fans of his or at least fans of some of the policies that he was pushing forward. A real photo. Everybody's hands look like hands.
5 fingers.
Yes. You can see that some parts of the photo are blurry, some parts are sharp. People's faces are in different shadows and lighting. That makes perfect sense. Real photo.
All right. And what do we have here?
We have a not real photo that was shared on social media the Monday before Super Tuesday by a talk radio host in Florida, conservative talk radio host in Florida, who is now a former talk radio host. And it's AI generated. And here's a couple of telltale signs. People's hands, if you look on the right, Trump's fingers have some sort of weird little webbing on them. On the left, there are sort of extra fingers and extra hands of unknown origin. People's faces are, again, lit in weird ways. That hat that the lady's wearing on the right doesn't look right. If you look at the man's hat on the upper left, the wording is kind of gibberish. We've got some people in Santa hats for some reason. And also the lighting.
Why not?
Why not? And also the lighting, again, on people's faces is just a little unnatural, and people are looking a little shinier than they might. For some reason, people's skin gets really shiny in AI generated images. But this is a perfect example. It's not that Donald Trump does not have Black supporters or might not be in a setting surrounded by Black people, but this is someone who is trying to perpetuate a narrative and create a sense of maybe more support within a particular community than he might otherwise have. And, you know, when the BBC asked Mark Kay, this conservative talk radio host, about this, he said, look, you know, it's no big deal. It doesn't matter if anybody is making their choices about who to vote for based on whether or not Trump is really hanging out with Black people at a party. You know, they're in trouble anyway.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this before we let you go, Kimberly. Between this and, you know, especially that Kate Middleton image, which went everywhere, are we at a turning point, do you think?
I think it's just as Dr. Wardle said, where we are at a turning point where people really aren't trusting images and video in the same way anymore, and audio, as we've said before. But I do think that we are at a place where we have an opportunity for everyone to be a little bit more cautious about what's crossing their social media feeds and what you're sharing, but also to educate yourself and scrutinize images. But I do hope that we're able to find a way to build up our own personal networks of sources that we know that we can trust, where even if they do somehow accidentally have a mistake get in there, they'll acknowledge it and notify people. And hopefully we can all find a way to know what to believe when we see it with our own eyes.
I always feel better after talking to you about this, Kimberly.
Good. I like to be optimistic.
Well, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Lily.
That was Marketplace Senior Correspondent Kimberly Adams. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Decoding Democracy. New episodes drop bi-weekly on Tuesdays. And if you have any stories you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. And you can leave a comment below. You can subscribe to us at Marketplace APM on YouTube. Daniel Shin produced this episode, and I'm Lily Jamali.